I noticed the bracelet was missing on a Tuesday morning, September 12th to be exact. It was one of those mornings where the silence felt heavier than usual, the kind where your coffee tastes bitter no matter how much sugar you add. I'd just finished vacuuming the hallway when I walked past my jewelry box and felt something was wrong. The gold bracelet, my mother's bracelet, wasn't there. At first, I told myself maybe I'd placed it somewhere else, that I had worn it recently and left it in a coat pocket or my bathroom drawer. I retraced my steps for hours, looked under couch cushions, rummaged through purses I hadn't touched since spring. Nothing. I even emptied out the lint trap in the dryer. That bracelet was real 18K, thick Italian links, custom clasped. My mother had worn it every Sunday until the week she passed. I kept it not just because of its value, but because when I wore it, I remembered how her hand felt when she squeezed mine. I never wore it often, just on special days, and my birthday was coming up, my 63rd. Not a milestone, but after the year I'd had, it mattered. I didn't immediately suspect Lauren, but I did remember she complimented the bracelet a few weeks prior. She'd been over-helping with the Sunday roast, or rather, critiquing how I did mine, and she'd eyed it while pretending to stir the gravy. "That's real gold, right?" she'd said, with that familiar smirk she always wore when speaking to me. "Vintage?" I'd nodded, and told her the story behind it. I remember she tilted her head, pretending to care. "It's beautiful," she said. "So, old world." Lauren always had a way of making a compliment sound like a threat. That week, I called the local pawn shops, 3 of them within a 10-mile radius. I gave a vague description. The second place, Golden Return on Harlow Street, hesitated. The young man on the phone asked if I had faux, tous, or a serial number. I did. I'd taken a picture of the bracelet on my birthday last year, and thank God I'd kept the original box from the appraisal too. I scanned everything and emailed it. That was September 13th. On September 15th, I got a call back. "Yes, ma'am," the man said. "It came in 6 days ago. Sold for $1,350. We paid in cash." I froze. I asked, without trying to shake in my voice, "Who brought it in?" He paused. "We have her on camera." It was a woman. Blonde, mid-30s, black puffer jacket, jeans with a white stripe down the side. We always record for insurance purposes. That was Lauren's go-to outfit. She wore those ridiculous jeans every week, as if the stripe made her look taller. I asked if I could come in to see the footage. They said no, not without police involvement, so I called my son, David. Now you should know this about David. He's always been the type to see the best in people, especially Lauren. He married her 3 years ago after a whirlwind 6-month romance and called it fate. I called it something else, but I kept my opinions to myself, until now. When I told him the bracelet was gone, and that I suspected it had been pawned, his voice got tight, defensive. "Mom," he said, "you're jumping to conclusions. I have photo evidence, a receipt, a date, a physical description. David, who else has access to that box?" He didn't respond. "I haven't had guests. I haven't been out of town. Lauren was the only one who asked about the bracelet, and it disappeared a week later." Still, he defended her. There has to be another explanation. That was the moment something shifted in me, not just because of the bracelet, but because my son, my only son, wouldn't even entertain the possibility that his wife might be the problem. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I thanked him for listening and hung up. But inside, I started to plan. 3 days later, on the day of my birthday dinner, Lauren arrived wearing a bracelet. I watched her from across the table, sipping her wine like nothing happened, dangling her wrist every chance she got. But I knew gold, and I knew my bracelet. The fake she wore was too shiny. The clasp was off. Mine had a unique infinity latch. Hers had a basic lobster clip. The weight wasn't right either. It didn't swing the same when she gestured toward the cake I made myself because she ran out of time. She had pawned the original, bought a cheap replica, and wore it to my birthday. That was when I made my final decision. Lauren had taken something that didn't belong to her, not just a bracelet, but my trust, my legacy. She thought I was too old, too forgetful, too soft to fight back. But Lauren didn't know the kind of woman I used to be. She didn't know that I still had her ex-fiancé's number. Marcus, the one she left without a word 5 years ago. The one she told everyone was obsessive and unstable. The one she called a nobody. I knew him as kind, polite, too generous for his own good. He once painted my back fence just because it was bothering him. I had a feeling he'd be curious to hear from me. So that night, while Lauren and David were helping themselves to a second slice of cake, I slipped into the kitchen, found my phone, and texted Marcus. "Hi, Marcus. It's been a while. You free for dinner this weekend?" Marcus replied within 10 minutes. "Wow. Hi. I didn't expect this. Sure, I'm free Saturday. Where and when?" I stared at the message longer than I should have, not because I was uncertain, I'd made my decision, but because I could almost hear his voice again, that gentle, hesitant tone he used to have when he visited with Lauren, back when I thought she might actually settle down with someone who treated her well. Lauren had thrown him away like last season's handbag. I replied, "Come to my house. Dinner at 6, just us. There is something I need to talk to you about." He liked the message. That was Thursday. On Friday, I went to the bank and withdrew $1,500 in cash. I wasn't sure what pawn shops paid out for a bracelet like mine, but I figured $1,350 plus a little sting money would get it back, if it hadn't already been melted down. I placed the cash in an envelope and labeled it, "just in case." Then I went to Golden Return. They'd called me once more that morning, asking if I wanted to reclaim the bracelet or file a report. I told them I'd like to see it first. The man behind the counter, a bearded fellow with half-moon glasses and tired eyes, brought it out in a velvet pouch. My heart tightened. It was her, my bracelet, the real one, worn smooth on one link where my mother's watch used to rub, the tiny dent on the clasp from when I dropped it on the patio 3 years ago. "I'll take it," I said. He nodded. "We still need to document everything for legal purposes, ma'am. There's a form you'll need to fill if you're not the person who pawned it." "I understand," I said, and slid the envelope across the counter. "Let's not involve the police. Not yet." He counted the money slowly, then nodded once. I left with my bracelet in my bag and an ember of something warm starting to glow in my chest. Not joy, not relief, control. Saturday came fast. I made lasagna, the way Marcus liked it, with fresh basil and real bechamel, not that store-bought nonsense Lauren used to sneak into her sauces. I decanted a modest red wine, set the table for 2, lit 1 candle. Not too romantic, just warm. When Marcus arrived, he looked older, of course, thinner, a touch of gray along his temples, but his eyes were still kind. "Smells incredible," he said, walking in with a polite smile and a bottle of Chianti. "What's the occasion?" I handed him a plate. "We'll get to that." We talked about little. Things at first. Work, weather, his new apartment in North Ridge. He worked for a logistics firm now. Still single. Said he'd tried dating again, but didn't have the energy for games. "I spent 4 years rebuilding my credit," he said with a small laugh. "Lauren left me with 2 maxed-out cards and a lease I couldn't afford. But hey, at least I got the dog." I blinked. "She left you the dog?" He smiled. "She forgot the dog." I almost choked on my wine. Eventually, I told him everything. The bracelet, the pawn shop, the fake she wore to my birthday, my son refusing to believe a word of it. I watched Marcus's expression shift, from confusion to disbelief to something darker. Not surprised, though. "She always wanted shortcuts," he said finally, stirring his wine with one hand. "But this is new." I leaned back in my chair. "She thinks she's won, that she's married into safety, that no one will challenge her." He met my eyes. "What do you want me to do?" I paused. "I want you to come to my next family dinner. Sit at the table. Smile. Talk. Be charming. Don't mention the past unless she does, but when she does," I slid a folder across the table. The pawn shop receipt, the photo of her at the counter, the side-by-side comparison of the real bracelet and the fake. "I want you to be the one who reacts." He leafed through the papers slowly. "You want her to sweat. I want her to drown in it." He nodded once, his jaw tight. "I can do that." We made plans. Next Sunday, dinner at my house. Just the immediate family. David, Lauren, me, and a friend I'd invited over. I told David I wanted to introduce someone who was important to me lately. I could hear the suspicion in his voice, but he agreed. That week, Lauren didn't call or text. David sent a brief message on Thursday asking if he should bring dessert. I told him no. Everything was taken care of, but I could feel it. A shift in the air, like the moment before a storm. Sunday evening came. I set the table just right. Placemats, cloth napkins, wine glasses, chicken marsala with roasted root vegetables. My real bracelet rested on my wrist, peeking out with every movement I made. David and Lauren arrived at 6:08. Lauren looked put together as always. Pencil skirt, stiff hair, gold earrings that were too loud for a family dinner, and on her wrist, the fake bracelet again. She had no idea I had the original back, that it now gleamed under the dining room lights while hers dulled like cheap brass. "I hope you don't mind," I said cheerfully, "but I invited someone." "Who?" Lauren asked, already annoyed. Just then, Marcus stepped through the back door. Lauren turned pale, and then, instantly, too pink. Her fork paused mid-air. David looked between them, confused. "Do you two know each other?" Marcus smiled, calm and slow. "We go way back." I smiled too, even as I took a sip of wine. "Oh yes," I said sweetly. "They used to be so close." Lauren didn't speak for the rest of dinner, but the night was just getting started. Lauren didn't eat much that night. She picked at her chicken like it might bite her back. Her wine glass remained half full, and every few minutes she glanced at Marcus like he was going to lunge across the table and air out all her secrets. He didn't, not at first. Marcus was masterful, kind, composed, perfectly warm, but with just enough edge to keep Lauren on alert. He complimented the food, asked David about work, nodded politely at Lauren when she spoke, which wasn't often, and chuckled at one of my stories about the time our stove caught fire on Christmas morning. But under the surface, I could feel her unraveling. She clutched her napkin too tightly, laughed too loud when David made a joke, shifted her chair back every time Marcus leaned forward. "Marcus," I said sweetly, halfway through dinner, "you should tell them that story, the one about the bracelet." Lauren's fork froze mid-air. David looked confused. "Jen, what bracelet?" Marcus blinked, like he needed a moment to remember. Then he nodded slowly, his voice soft and casual. "Oh, right. Yeah. This was years ago. I was dating someone who borrowed something from her boyfriend's mother, without asking." Lauren went stiff. "Gold bracelet. Real stuff. Big family heirloom. Said she just needed quick cash to cover a work emergency, but then forgot to replace it before the mom noticed." He took a sip of wine. "Pawned it for something like $1,300, then bought a knockoff from a boutique downtown and pretended nothing ever happened." David set his fork down. "Seriously?" Lauren laughed, tight and unconvincing. "That's oddly specific." Marcus smiled at her. "Isn't it?" She blinked. "Are you implying I did something like that?" "I didn't say any names." He turned back to his plate, but the story always stuck with me. Funny how people think no one will notice details, like how real gold has weight. Silence. You could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. I smiled and picked up my wine glass, letting the real bracelet gleam against the candlelight. "Funny," I said softly, "because this is the real one, and it's been through quite a journey." Lauren's face. Oh, how I wish I could have taken a photo. Her jaw clenched so hard I thought her teeth might crack. "I'm sorry," she said suddenly, looking at me with that fake innocence I'd grown to hate. "What exactly are you accusing me of?" I set my glass down gently. "Nothing. I'm just saying, it's a shame when people confuse family with opportunity." David looked back and forth between us. "Mom, what's going on?" I turned to him. "Do you remember my bracelet? The one you told me I must have misplaced?" He nodded slowly. "Well, it wasn't misplaced. It was pawned. I found it at Golden Return on Harlow Street. The owner gave me a photo of the woman who brought it in." I pulled out the folder and placed it on the table between us. Lauren didn't even look at it. Her hands were in her lap. Her body was frozen. "I haven't looked yet," David said quietly. "Should I?" "Yes," I said. He opened it. The pawn slip. The date. The timestamp. A still image from the security camera. Lauren in her puffer jacket and striped jeans, handing the bracelet over the counter. He stared at it. "Lauren?" She scoffed. "That could be anyone. It's blurry." Marcus leaned in. You wore that exact outfit the day we ran into each other at Target. I remember because you made fun of a woman for buying off-brand shampoo. Lauren snapped. You have no idea what you're talking about. I folded my napkin. You thought I wouldn't know the difference between real gold and the knockoff you wore to my birthday. David's eyes widened. Wait, that wasn't the real one? She pawned the original, I said, then wore a fake. On the night she smiled at me across the table and toasted to family. Lauren stood up. This is insane. You're all ganging up on me over a bracelet? Marcus shrugged. Funny thing. That's what you said when you kept my credit card after we broke up. It's just a card, Marcus. Relax. David turned to her, quiet and stunned. Is that true? She hesitated. Too long. Then, fine. I did it, but I was going to replace it. I just needed some quick cash, and your mom never wears it. It was just sitting there. It wasn't yours to take, I said, my voice low but steady. And you didn't plan to replace it. You hoped I wouldn't notice. You lied, and then you brought that lie to my birthday. Her face flushed deep red. You're seriously going to ruin our marriage over this? A piece of jewelry? No, I said, standing slowly. You're the one who did that. David looked at me, then at her, then back again. How long have you known? Since the week after it disappeared. Why didn't you tell me? I did. You didn't believe me. He looked down, had no answer for that. Lauren grabbed her purse. I'm done. This is ridiculous. Where are you going? David asked, but she didn't respond. She marched out, heels clicking like gunshots across the tile. The silence after the door slammed was a long, heavy thing. Marcus exhaled first. Well, that was cathartic. David didn't speak. He just stared at the image in the folder. The woman he thought he married, the trust he'd built his life around, gone in one grainy black and white image. I stood, walked over, and gently picked up my bracelet from the table. She thought this was just about gold, I said quietly, but it's about so much more. David looked at me, finally. What do I do now? I can't answer that, I replied, but I'll be here. When you're ready. Marcus stayed a little longer. We talked while David sat in the living room alone, staring into space. As Marcus left, he paused by the door. You didn't need to include me in this, you know. I smiled. I know. But I'm glad you did. So was I. David didn't go home that night. After Marcus left, he just sat in silence, staring at the folded pawn slip like it was a piece of broken glass, something you can't touch without cutting yourself. Around 11 p.m., he finally asked if he could stay in the guest room. I nodded, said nothing more, and went to bed. In the dark, I lay awake for hours, listening for sounds. His footsteps, a door creaking open, maybe a sudden burst of tears. But it was quiet, just the kind of quiet that only follows a collapse. The next morning, I made coffee and fried eggs, just like I used to when David was a teenager and couldn't face school. He didn't touch the eggs, but he drank the coffee slowly. When he finally looked up at me, his face was hollow. She said it was a mistake, he whispered, that she was desperate, that she meant to fix it. I didn't say anything. I'd heard it all before. I asked her why she didn't just come to me, he went on. She said I'd judge her, that I already looked at her line, like she was a burden. I stirred my tea. And do you? He looked pained. No. I loved her. I still... But he couldn't finish the sentence. She used that love, I said gently, like a shield. David's hands clenched. I feel like an idiot. You're not. You wanted to believe in your marriage. That's not foolish. He let out a long sigh and looked at the bracelet on my wrist. She wore that knockoff to your birthday. I feel sick. I nodded slowly. It was a performance. Everything with her always was. He didn't respond, but he didn't argue either. By Wednesday, he'd packed a small bag and moved into a short-term rental near his office. He said he needed space to think. Lauren, predictably, didn't take it well. She came to my house the next day, uninvited. I was clipping roses in the front yard when her white SUV screeched up to the curb, and she stepped out in oversized sunglasses and a too-tight workout set. Her lips were pursed like she was preparing for war. We need to talk, she snapped. I stood up slowly. I don't think we do. She took a step closer. You humiliated me. You ambushed me in front of Marcus and David. You could have come to me directly, but no, you had to make a scene. I removed my gloves, folded them carefully. Lauren, I did come to you. You wore my bracelet. You lied. That was the scene. She scoffed. It was a stupid bracelet. I said I was sorry. Were you? She didn't answer. Or were you just sorry you got caught? Her jaw tightened. You don't get to lecture me. You've been trying to sabotage my marriage since day one. You never accepted me. That's because you never tried to be accepted, I replied calmly. You came in with lies, secrets, and that's when something inside me turned cold. I'll pretend I didn't hear that, I said, stepping closer. Because if you say one more word about my son after everything you've done, I swear, Lauren, I will go beyond dinner guests. I will go public. Her eyes narrowed. Public? I have everything documented. The pawn slip, the photos, the fake bracelet. I could post it all online. I could send it to your employer. Oh, wait, you don't have one, do you? She flushed. You wouldn't dare. Oh, I would. But only if you force me. She took a step back. The fear flickered in her eyes for the first time. Leave David alone, I said, my voice low and steady. Let him heal. If you try to spin this, to lie again, I'll make sure everyone you've ever tried to impress knows exactly who you are. Lauren stood there for a long moment, lips trembling, eyes blinking fast. Then she turned and got in her car. I watched her drive away and felt not victorious, not smug, just done. Later that week, Marcus dropped by again, with coffee and a small bouquet of mums. I asked him why the flowers, and he said, because you finally got what you deserved. Justice? I asked. He smiled. Freedom. We sat on the porch and talked for a while, about old movies, bad dates, and the absurdity of how long Lauren had played us both. Do you think she'll try to fight for him? He asked. Of course, I said, but not out of love, out of habit. David called later that night. Said Lauren had shown up at his rental crying, begging, spinning some new tale about how pawn shops trap people, and she never meant to hurt anyone. She said you set her up, he added, sounding both tired and amused. I didn't need to, I replied. She tripped over her own lies. Then he said something that surprised me. I'm going to file for divorce. I swallowed. Are you sure? She crossed a line. I can't walk her back from. And honestly, I think I've been waiting for a reason. We spoke for another 10 minutes. Nothing deep, just little things. But when we hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. That weekend, I went into my closet and pulled out my jewelry box, cleaned the pieces, organized the drawers, and when I got to the bracelet, my mother's bracelet, I placed it in its own velvet pouch and tucked it into my safety deposit envelope. It didn't need to sit on my wrist anymore. It had done its job. The divorce papers came 2 weeks later. David handed them to me over coffee one crisp Saturday morning, his hands trembling just slightly as he placed the envelope on the table between us. It was heavy, but not with guilt or regret, more like the weight of something finally being settled, like a chapter closing with a satisfying finality. I never thought I'd be here, he admitted quietly, filing for divorce. But after everything, I think it's the only way to really start fresh. I reached out and squeezed his hand. You deserve peace. You deserve honesty. And most of all, you deserve someone who loves you without conditions. David looked down, then smiled faintly. Thank you, Mom. Over the next few weeks, Lauren tried everything. Phone calls at odd hours, emails filled with apologies and promises to change, even showing up at David's work with flowers and tears. He blocked her number and ignored the emails. I told him to be firm. She's not coming back, David, I said gently, and you know it. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, David came home and found me in the living room, the soft glow of the lamp casting shadows across the familiar walls. I was knitting, something I'd taken up to calm my restless mind, and looked up as he entered. He sat beside me, silent at first, then said, he took my hand. I wanted you to know, I'm moving on, and I'm proud of you, I replied. You deserve happiness. That night, as I lay in bed, I looked down at the bracelet resting on my nightstand, my mother's legacy, finally home. I thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the lies, the pain, and I realized something. This wasn't just about a piece of jewelry. It was about reclaiming respect, about standing firm when those you love are broken by deceit, about knowing your worth even when others try to take it away. I had fought. I had lost sleep and shed tears, but I had also won. Because in the end, truth was the most valuable thing of all. The phone buzzed softly on the nightstand. A message from Marcus. Dinner next week? I think we both deserve a fresh start. I smiled, feeling something warm spread through me. Hope, absolutely, I whispered. And with that, a new chapter began.